Hi, it's Katrina. The fanged whale. The skull of an ancient predatory whale was discovered in the middle of nowhere in Peru. This deadly marine mammal lived 36 million years ago, a time when Peru's Ocucaje Desert was underwater. According to Rodolfo Salas Gismondi from the Department of Vertebrate Paleontology at the Natural History Museum in Lima, the animal was one of the biggest predators of its day. It's been nicknamed the Ocucaje predator for how fierce it once was. Its real name is the Basilosaurus, and it was at the top of the food chain. The creature grew to be 55 feet long and had enormous jaws filled with sharp teeth. This allowed it to take down fish, other prehistoric whales, and even apex predators like sharks. Thankfully for paleontologists today, one particular Basilosaurus died and floated to the bottom of the ocean, where it became preserved in sediments. The Ocucaje Desert is a hotbed for paleontologists who want to study these type of marine animals. Because it was once an ocean, and because it's now a flatland of a desert, it's relatively easy to dig up the bones of prehistoric monsters. The Mystery Cave. Researchers in Canada were flying a helicopter across a remote valley in British Columbia's Wells Grey Provincial Park. They were looking for caribou, which makes what they found that much more impressive. Amid the unpopulated rolling hills and rocky peaks, they came across an enormous hole in the ground. It appeared to be the entrance to a giant cave bored vertically into the surface of the earth. No one had ever seen or heard of this before. As it turns out, these researchers may have stumbled upon the largest cave in Canada. Catherine Hickson, a local geologist, went to the site to check it out firsthand and was shocked by what she saw. The cave's mouth is 328 feet across, shrouded in mist, and at least 440 feet deep. There's no official name for the cave yet. Scientists are currently working with representatives from the First Nations to see if they already have a name for it. One of the first researchers who spotted the cave called it the Sarlacc Pit, a reference to the pit in the desert Jabba the Hutt threw prisoners into in the Star Wars film Return of the Jedi. Sound familiar? So far, that name has stuck in the media. A Change.org petition is now trying to make Sarlacc Pit the official name of the cave. As for why it's so big, researchers believe it was formed by melting ice flow, which pours into the cave and then tunnels for 1.5 miles before it emerges on the other side. As of right now, nobody has been able to get all the equipment needed into such a rural area to descend into the giant hole in the ground. For all we know, it could be filled with all kinds of mysterious creatures. The Aktala Monastery. In the north of Armenia, just a few miles from the border of Georgia, in a genuine no man's land, is one of the most fascinating monuments to Christian history anywhere in the Caucasus. The monument is called Aktala Monastery, and it's situated on a plateau overlooking a river. It was once hidden inside the walls of a major fortress, but that fortress has since been destroyed. The history of this monastery begins in the 10th century, 1,000 years ago. The location was perfect for a major defensive structure to help protect the Tashir Zoraget kingdom against invaders. 2 centuries later, the Princess Miriam of the Kurikian clan ordered that a church be built inside the fortress. This became the Church of the Most Holy Mother of God, and it became so popular that the fortress transformed into a monastery. In the 14th century, the building fell into the possession of the Georgian Orthodox Church. 100 years later, a small settlement was established just at the base of the monastery. It was invaded by foreigners twice, and in the 18th century, the dome of the central temple was destroyed. Shortly after, the monastery fell into ruin. After 900 years of safety, it was abandoned and left to rot. There's nobody left at the monastery, and the only people seen here are Greek pilgrims marching through the desolate landscape to mark the birth of the Virgin Mary on the 21st of September. Ruto PA. Ruto PA, also known as Richborough Castle, is the ruin of an ancient Roman-Saxon fort in the United Kingdom. Although nobody can agree exactly on the origins of the fortress, scholars agree it was probably the landing site for the Claudian invasion. This was the successful Roman campaign to conquer Britain in the year 43 AD, turning it into the Roman province of Britannia. At the time of the invasion, Ruto PA had a large natural harbor that made it an ideal spot for the Romans. They could bring in ships, they could use them as defense, and could bring in supplies from mainland Europe. Once the invasion started paying off, the Romans began expanding their British Empire out in all directions from this single port. There were connections to Canterbury, Dover, Lympne, and Reculver. After some years, as the Romans pushed farther north, Ruto PA became a commercial town. It was so close to Europe that the Romans imported white marble from Italy to build a massive arch over 80 feet tall. This arch was considered the gateway to Roman Britain. By the year 250 AD, things started going south. The empire was under siege from the Saxons and the Frankish invaders, and Ruto PA was transformed into a military fortress. It survived up until the 5th century, when the Roman Empire completely fell apart. Then the whole place was abandoned. Today, it's a shabby ruin in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by farmland. Just wanted to give a big shout out to Terrelyn Gunshire, who has been enjoying our compilation videos. If you love longer videos and want to see a bunch of mysterious and strange discoveries, be sure to check those out and subscribe for more videos like these. A prehistoric drawing. In Egypt's eastern desert, archaeologist Mahmoud Tony made a shocking discovery. He was on an expedition going through one of the largest, awe-inspiring deserts in the world when he found a chunk of marble stone. This marble stone was covered in drawings that appear to be from the prehistoric era. Somebody, thousands and thousands of years ago, drew a hunting scene on a random chunk of stone. It survived in the Great Desert until now. The drawing is of a hunter. He's holding a weapon in one hand, led by a pair of hunting dogs. There's some kind of enormous beast running from them. The best guess anyone has is that the huge animal was an Arabian oryx, one of the most hunted animals in prehistoric times. The discovery is fascinating because of the drawing's location in the middle of nowhere. There are no archaeological ruins and no traces of civilization, just a rock on the ground with someone's drawing on it. But it's also fascinating because it gives some insight into prehistoric times in Egyptian deserts. Thousands of years ago, the eastern desert wasn't the middle of nowhere at all. There was plenty of water, trees, and plants, and the place was bustling with hunters and wild animals. Ruins in Israel. Drone footage recently helped to uncover a set of ancient ruins. The ruins were built 2,200 years ago during the 3rd century BC, or what historians call the Hellenistic period. It was the Idumeans who made these mysterious structures in Israel's Shephelah region, a place of low hills between the mountains and the coastal plains. After archaeologists scanned the area using their remote drones, identifying the site for the first time, they went in with their hammers and chisels to do an excavation. What they uncovered is pretty fascinating. They found 2 stone altars in one of the rooms, with one of the altars carved in the likeness of a bull. It was around this time that researchers realized they were standing in what was once a magnificent temple, originally held up by towering pillars. The bull was likely a god worshipped by the Idumeans. But here's the thing, nobody knows who the deity was. There are so few Idumean temples left standing that they can be counted on one hand. These people were descendants of the biblical Edomites, desert nomads who roamed into the mountainous region beyond the Dead Sea and settled there, but they were crushed by Judas Maccabeus around the year 100 BC. He forced them to assimilate with the Judean population. The last Idumean vanished 2,000 years ago, and hardly anything about them has survived. That makes this temple an extraordinary discovery in the middle of a hot and grassy desert, and all thanks to new drone technology helping out archaeologists. The Sumela Monastery. The Sumela Monastery is located high up in the Mela Mountains of Turkey, an ancient Greek Orthodox monastery dedicated to the Virgin Mary. It was built in the 4th century and is one of the most isolated, oldest, and mysterious monasteries in the world. It's amazing because the monastery isn't even located in a Christian country anymore. Turkey has long been a majority Muslim nation, and it shows just how much things change over the centuries. The monastery faces the Altyn Dere Valley in the Trabzon province, and its origins are unclear. One story says the monastery was founded by a pair of priests from Athens during the reign of the Roman Emperor Theodosius I. This was around the year 375 AD. It remained a remote Christian outpost up until around the 13th century, when it received riches from the Empire of Trabzon, established in the region in 1204 AD. The monastery became even richer in the 18th century under the Ottoman Empire. In modern times, it became even more splendid. Larger buildings were installed, magnificent decorations were brought in, and gifts were sent from Greek Orthodox communities all across Turkey. It was in the 19th century that foreigners began to visit the majestic monastery, standing nearly 4,000 feet above sea level. In 1923, the monastery was deserted following the forced population exchange between Greece and Turkey. Then, in 1930, a terrible fire burned through the monastery and caused major destruction. All wooden parts of the structure were destroyed. Today, the monastery is a rare historical building in the middle of a barren, mountainous region. Jug in a cave. An American-Israeli named Roddy Brown, currently living in Israel, discovered an artifact from 5,000 years ago totally by accident. He had gone for a hike with his friends near the Dead Sea when they decided to climb into a remote cave for fun. The cave is known as Cave 53, and it was the site of an archaeological dig a few years ago in 2017 by researchers with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. The dig revealed pieces of jars, very old olive seeds, and even some scraps from an ancient scroll. Everyone was quite surprised that so many artifacts had been found, considering there had already been a previous excavation 30 years before that. The original excavations 3 decades ago had revealed pieces of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Nonetheless, Brown and his friends went to check out the isolated cave. Without even trying, they came across a fully intact jug. That may seem kind of boring, a plain old jug made from some kind of clay, but it's 5,000 years old. Somebody, thousands of years before Judaism was even a thing, before the Roman Empire, and before the Dead Sea Scrolls were written, someone left a jug inside this cave. Finding such an artifact is like reaching directly into the past. Ancient boomerangs. If there's one thing synonymous with Australia other than kangaroos, it's got to be the boomerang. But what a lot of people don't realize is that boomerangs are actually ancient and go back thousands of years. Just recently, a pair of employees with the National Parks and Wildlife Service came across a small collection of boomerangs in a dry creek bed near Cooper Creek. If you know anything about Australia, you'll know this is about as middle of nowhere as it gets, apparently, because I've never been. The workers discovered 4 boomerangs, though not like any boomerang you've ever seen. These were non-returning boomerangs, meaning they could be thrown, but they wouldn't boomerang back. They were taken to a laboratory to be analyzed by researchers with the Australian Heritage Services. The artifacts came from between 1650 and 1830, only a few centuries ago. Now this has created something of a mystery. According to archaeologists, boomerangs go back at least 10,000 years, but these are much newer. What researchers are trying to figure out is why they were made not to return. What was the point of a boomerang that didn't come back to a person after it was thrown? Researchers believe they could have been used for fighting, perhaps for digging, or maybe even in some strange and long-forgotten ritual. Tashrabat. Tashrabat is one of the most isolated, middle-of-nowhere places ever. It's an ancient trading post located in Kyrgyzstan. Hundreds of years ago, the isolation of Tashrabat made it a very popular destination for caravans traveling along the Silk Road. As you may know already, groups of traders, merchants, and travelers wandered along the Silk Road from China to the Middle East and then into Europe. To accommodate the explosion of travelers in the Middle Ages, outposts cropped up in many places. The more isolated the outpost, the more likely caravans were to stop and rest. Tashrabat was built in the 15th century of pure stone at an altitude of over 11,400 feet. It's located in a snowy mountainous region near the Torugard Pass. To the north is another ruined fortress that almost nobody knows anything about. And other than that, there's nothing at all in the area. The ruins themselves consist of 31 rooms, each one in the shape of a dome, once used for accommodating traveling merchants. The truth is that very little is known about how Tashrabat came to be. One legend says it was built by a father and son, and that the son fell in love with a traveling girl and abandoned his father. But that's probably just a myth. Nobody knows when the place was finally abandoned for good, but it probably happened slowly as the Silk Road became irrelevant in more modern times. These days, visitors to Tashrabat have to be careful of altitude sickness since it's basically at the top of a mountain. Spinosaurus Bones. Over 95 million years ago in what is today the Moroccan Sahara, one of the most unusual dinosaurs frolicked across the land and hunted in the mighty rivers. Morocco may be a desert today, but it was once a lush grassland brimming with fantastic beasts, including the Spinosaurus, a creature of truly preposterous proportions. This thing could grow to be nearly 50 feet in length, with a weight of 7 tons. It had a snout like a crocodile, a large sail on its back, and conical teeth that it used to rip apart its prey. It was a top predator, but new information has changed the way scientists look at this titanic beast. One thing scientists agree on is that the Spinosaurus was at least semi-aquatic, but what nobody has been able to figure out is how exactly the creature hunted. Did the Spinosaurus swim through the water to hunt down giant marine reptiles, or did it stand on the shore like a reptilian heron and snatch moving fish? Researchers believe they may finally have the answer. They recently compared the density of Spinosaurus bones to other animals that still exist. What they discovered is that the Spinosaurus had extremely dense bone walls exactly like penguins. In other words, this monstrosity had penguin bones. What this suggests, at least according to researchers from the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, is that the Spinosaurus spent a significant amount of time in the water, just like penguins. That makes it one of only 2 dinosaurs other than birds that ever adapted to spending time in the water. Woolly mammoth. In the southwest of England, a man was working hard on a new home development project. He was in the middle of digging when he accidentally broke into a mysterious cave system filled with the bones of prehistoric monsters. The worker was shocked to see over 200 clusters of bones scattered throughout the inside of the cave at Sherford, just on the outskirts of Plymouth. These bones belonged to animals that roamed across England between 30,000 and 60,000 years ago. This includes woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, wolves, hyenas, reindeers, and all kinds of other small mammals. The woolly mammoth remains are some of the most impressive of the bunch. After the worker made the initial discovery, paleontologists went in to remove the bones. They uncovered the huge tusk of a woolly mammoth, a molar tooth, and some other bones. As for the woolly mammoth, they discovered its incomplete skull and one piece of its lower jaw. The wolf skeleton was completely intact, showing an extinct species that hasn't been seen in tens of thousands of years. But by far the strangest part is that all these prehistoric creatures ended up dead in the same place. It's strange because some of them probably coexisted, but many lived at different points over a longer stretch of history. The main theory scientists have now is that the animals were falling into an inescapable pit. The pit must have been dangerous for thousands of years, with everything from horses to shrews falling into it and dying. And while it was tragic for the animals, it's now given scientists a one-of-a-kind look into the prehistoric ecosystem of England, to a time before humans. Giant worms. On the seafloor 20 million years ago, there was a gigantic predatory marine worm that built its own tunnels and used death traps to snag its prey. Newly discovered fossils in Taiwan have revealed that these huge underwater worms ambush their victims, kind of like burrowing spiders do. They created deep tunnels on the bottom of the sea, reinforced the walls with mucus, and then sat and waited for something yummy to swim by. Once a tasty-looking victim came close, the worm lunged out of the tunnel like one of the monsters from the old Tremors movies. Now, these giant worms had jaws like steel traps that could tear their victims into pieces. Researchers believe they were the ancient ancestors of modern bobbit worms. Bobbit worms do the same thing as these prehistoric freaks. They hide in underwater burrows and grow to be about 10 feet long. The only thing is that they are not very thick. Modern bobbit worms are only about 0.8 inches in thickness, making them no more terrifying than a really thin snake. The ancient ones were about the same thickness and about the same level of scary as a snake. But perhaps even more interesting than the predatory behavior of the worms is how long they've been alive. Bobbit worms are also known as bristle worms, and both they and their prehistoric ancestors have been around for 543 million years. Which do you think is creepier, snakes or worms? Let me know in the comments below. Prehistoric Sea Monster. An elk hunter in Montana is responsible for the discovery of an entirely new prehistoric sea creature. The discovery happened totally by accident. The Montana hunter was out looking for elk when he came across a random fossil. He handed it over to paleontologists, who after 7 years finally identified it as a new species of elasmosaur. It was a type of very ancient marine reptile that lived 70 million years ago. This was during a time when the inland sea flowed east of the Rocky Mountains and Montana was submerged by the ocean. So, just what was an elasmosaurus? Its defining characteristic was its neck, which could stretch over 18 feet long. Some had as many as 76 vertebrae. Patrick Druckenmiller from the University of Alaska Museum of the North said this newest species is actually something of a shrimp when compared to most elasmosaurs. Its neck only stretched 7.5 feet, and it only had around 40 vertebrae. This discovery has been something of a surprise in the dinosaur/marine reptile community because of the animal's ridiculously small stature. 70 million years ago, it was living at the same time as the larger Elasmosaurus. This means that contrary to what scientists thought, the Elasmosaurus did not evolve to have longer necks. There were plenty of different types, some with limbs 30 feet long and some that were tiny, like the Montana Elasmosaurus. The Giant Rhino. Paleontologists in China discovered a whole new species of giant rhino. They now believe it could be the largest land mammal that ever walked across the planet. It's being called the Paraceratherium lynchianese, or the Lynchia giant rhino. It was researchers from both China and the US who made the discovery after analyzing a fossil discovered back in 2015. The fossil was not broken into pieces like most fossils. They had the whole skull, over 3 feet in length, the cervical spine, and other skeletal parts all still connected to each other. The whole thing was dug out of the Lynchia Basin in the Gansu province. Just how big could the giant rhinoceros really be? Well, it weighed about 24 tons, and its entire bulk was roughly the size of 6 elephants. Its shoulders stood 16 feet off the ground, and its head was at 23 feet. It was 26 feet long from bottom to top, or about 8 feet longer than a giraffe. It was by far the largest mammal that scientists have proof of. It likely roamed all across China, Mongolia, and maybe even into parts of Eastern Europe 31 million years ago. What's your favorite prehistoric giant creature? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about prehistoric creatures. The monster whale. The remains of a giant monster whale was just recently discovered in the Peruvian desert. The whale is being described as one of the biggest predators to have ever existed, an ancient creature that lived 42 million years ago. The fossilized remains of the creature were found in the Ocucaje Desert of Peru, an area that was once a shallow sea. It was jammed full of marine life up until pretty recently. Other kinds of fossils that have been discovered in the desert include dwarf whales, or what scientists call walking whales. They got the nickname because they hadn't fully transitioned to traditional whales yet. They still had 4 legs and could waddle around on land. But this newly discovered predator didn't have the luxury of legs. Instead, it was part of the Basilosaurus family, a group of prehistoric cetaceans. But it differs from other members of its family because of its huge size and the fact that it had rows of sharp teeth. It was probably about 55 feet long and had a hearty hunger for sharks and entire schools of sardines. Sadly, this enormous sea monster went extinct about 33 million years ago. Or maybe not so sad. The growth of the Megalodon. The Megalodon was a terrifying sea shark that had teeth like steak knives, and there was nothing in the ocean that could kill it. It was the biggest shark that ever lived, and the epitome of an apex predator. Scientists recently made some shocking new discoveries about the Megalodon. No, they didn't find one living in the Mariana Trench. What they found is that the farther away from the equator the Megalodon lived, the larger it grew. The prehistoric shark got bigger the colder the water was. Scientists figured this out by studying fossilized teeth from various latitudes. Each tooth is about the size of a human hand and serrated like a kitchen knife. What scientists discovered is that the higher the latitude, the bigger the teeth. This actually has some really scary consequences for our world. It's been a theory for a long time, about 200 years, that animals get smaller when the water temperatures rise. And in recent days, scientists have noticed that sharks, rays, and other kinds of ocean predators are gradually moving towards the cold poles, away from the hotter waters of the ocean. Researchers now believe this great migration is signaling a major collapse in the aquatic ecosystems of the world. And if the Megalodon is any proof, many of these animals could be going extinct, or at least shrinking. The Megalodons that stayed nearer to the equator got smaller and smaller, while the ones that were smart enough to move into colder waters continued to grow bigger. At least that was how it went until they were all beaten out by modern sharks who were better at staying alive. The first giants. Back when dinosaurs were ruling the land, ichthyosaurs and other breeds of aquatic reptiles were ruling the seas. There were a lot of different species, lots of diversity, but ichthyosaurs were really the first ocean giants. They roamed across every ocean throughout the entire age of the dinosaurs, slowly evolving fins to swim better and other characteristics we still see these days in fish and whales. According to Dr. Martin Sander, an expert paleontologist from the University of Bonn, ichthyosaurs descended from an unknown group of land reptiles that breathed air and walked on 4 legs. Scientists don't know what these reptiles were, and they haven't found any trace of them. All scientists know is that they existed, and that they slithered into the water and became ichthyosaurs. To give you a better idea of how huge these reptiles were, let's look at a recently discovered fossil from the Triassic period, pulled out of Nevada's Augusta Mountains. It's one of the earliest ichthyosaurs, and also appears to be one of the biggest. It lived 247 million years ago, and was the largest animal for its time on either land or in the sea. It measured nearly 56 feet long. It was like a weird mix between a shark, a whale, a crocodile, and the Loch Ness Monster. Hungry crocodile. A prehistoric crocodile was discovered fossilized in Queensland, Australia. Paleontologists were shocked to come across this enormous beast, which lived 95 million years ago, but they became even more shocked when they started analyzing it. It turned out the prehistoric crocodile had eaten a smaller dinosaur, which they found fossilized in its belly. Shortly after, probably within hours, the enormous croc had then been eaten by a dinosaur even bigger than it was. It's one of the most visceral displays of the ancient food chain paleontologists have ever found. The medium fish ate the smaller fish, then was swallowed by the bigger fish. As the saying goes, there's always a bigger fish. This is a world first, says Matt White at the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum. Never before has a crocodile been found with a dead dinosaur in its stomach. Even more amazing is that the crocodile appears to be a new species. Researchers have named it Broken Dinosaur Killer. They say it was about 8 feet long. The dinosaur in its stomach hasn't been fully identified. Researchers think it was an ornithopod, a small plant eater with a beak that was no larger than a chicken. One of the researchers involved in the project said it probably would have looked a lot like Ducky from the Land Before Time. Tooth of the Mastodon. A 6-year-old boy made a shocking discovery of a prehistoric creature in Michigan. His name is Julian Gagnon, and he was with his family at the Dinosaur Hill Nature Preserve in Rochester Hills when he unwittingly became a young paleontologist. Julian was poking around in the dirt when he felt something that didn't feel exactly like a rock. He showed it to his family, who first dismissed it as a piece of natural debris, but soon enough, curiosity settled in and they took the mysterious chunk and Googled it. Google informed them it was a mastodon tooth, the actual tooth from an ancient elephant-like creature that inhabited North America up until 10,000 years ago. Researchers from the University of Michigan soon confirmed the discovery, and the family was very happy. Julian initially thought he was going to get $1 million for his find, and was pretty disappointed when that didn't happen. But the young scientist did get a unique visit to the Paleontology Museum, while a stuffy old scientist talked to him about his future career in dinosaurs. Just kidding.
The Space Eye. NASA space telescopes have discovered a giant cosmic eye. The telescopes looked into the Helix Nebula, where they captured one of the most amazing celestial phenomena ever. A glowing space eyeball, the likes of which we have never seen before. But just what is this great eye in the sky? The Helix Nebula, aka NGC 7293, consists of a dying star about 650 light-years from us in the Aquarius constellation. This dying star is what scientists call a planetary nebula. NASA used their Spitzer space telescope to capture long-wavelength infrared light, along with their Galaxy Evolution Explorer to look at ultraviolet light. Looking at these different light sources at once shows a huge glowing pupil in the center of a light burst, like the eye of God. You can only see it when viewing the ultraviolet radiation and infrared wavelengths at the same time. Believe it or not, this incredible phenomenon is a sneak peek at what will happen in our own solar system in around 5 billion years. Our sun will eventually turn into a planetary nebula as well when it reaches the end of its life. Fresh out of hydrogen and helium, for the fusion that takes place in its core. When this happens, our sun will expel its gaseous layers into an explosion of glowing shells. It will then become its very own cosmic eye, looking like the eye of Sauron depicted in the Lord of the Rings films in space. The explosive death of a giant star. For the first time in history, astronomers have witnessed one of the most powerful space phenomena. They saw a red supergiant star in its last days of life, just before it exploded. They actually saw it die and transform into a supernova. The star was first found back in 2020 by a team of researchers with Northwestern University and the University of California. They used the Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii to keep tabs on the star until it died. According to astrophysicist Wynne Jacobson-Gallen, it was dramatic and violent, unlike anything we have ever seen before. The reason this is so incredible is that supernovas are the biggest explosions that we know about. They only really happen with massive stars, ones that are around 12 times bigger than our own. And even though we've seen them before, we've only ever seen them after the event has happened. This is after gas and debris has been exploded out into space. The debris from these cosmic explosions is actually what's needed to form new stars and to produce the elements found right here on Earth. This particular supernova is in a faraway galaxy, over 120 million light-years from us. What that means is that it actually exploded 120 million years ago, and we were only able to see it happen now. Researchers got lucky and were able to watch the star as it got brighter and brighter, spitting out gas before it blew up. The actual explosion took less than a minute. Glass rain. On exoplanet HD 189733b, the rain is a literal nightmare. In fact, the entire planet is a nightmare. Looking through a telescope, it seems to be a rather ordinary world out in space, like a big blue marble in the middle of nothing. It does indeed look bright blue, with little swirls of white, just like a real marble. But the blue should not be mistaken for the same friendly skies we have here on Earth. The weather on this planet is terrifying and deadly. The wind on HD 189733b blows at gusts of up to 5,400 miles per hour. Just think about how phenomenal that is for a second. The wind is blowing at 7 times the speed of sound. If you were to try to step foot on the planet, your spaceship would get caught in a whirlwind so fast and so powerful, you would literally be whipped around the planet in an endless cyclone. And then there's the rain to contend with. The planet has one of the rarest weather systems, one that produces glass rain. It literally rains glass, and because of the intense winds, it rains glass sideways. This means you would be ripped to shreds during a rainstorm as you were hurtling around the marble in the endless hurricane. The blue color of the planet isn't a suggestion of tropical oceans like those here on Earth, but rather of a torched atmosphere that has clouds full of silica particles. What do you think a planet that rains glass would look like? Tell me in the comments. The Butterfly Nebula. The Butterfly Nebula has got to be one of the most gorgeous phenomena anywhere in the universe. It's known scientifically as NGC 6302 or Caldwell 69. It's a bipolar planetary nebula found in the constellation Scorpius. The structure inside the nebula, the one that looks like a beautiful red glowing butterfly, is one of the most complex things ever observed inside a planetary nebula. Remember the great cosmic eye we talked about earlier? This is kind of the same thing, but not quite. In the center of the butterfly is a star, same as with the eye. But this star is one of the hottest that scientists have ever identified. The surface temperature is upwards of 250,000 degrees Celsius or 450,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Even for a white dwarf, it's unbelievably hot. The Butterfly Nebula was first identified in 2009 by the Hubble Space Telescope. The reason it looks like a butterfly has to do with a dense equatorial disk of gas and dust. The disk has formed a bipolar structure, kind of like an hourglass, what we think of as the butterfly's wings. But all the glowing light and tiny dots you see inside the wings are actually ionization walls and knots. It's all crystalline water ice, quartz, silicates, and other space particles. Pretty incredible, right? Galactic Collisions. The Hubble Space Telescope captured a fascinating phenomenon in which one galaxy appeared to be on a collision course with another. The image taken by the telescope is truly unique. It shows spiral galaxy NGC 105 plunging into the edge of its neighboring galaxy as if the two were about to merge. And while it may look like that, that's not actually the case. It's just an illusion. NGC 105 is 215 million light-years away from us, hiding in the constellation Pisces. Even though it appears to be crashing into its neighbor, it's just a result of the way that the two galaxies are aligned in the night sky. Its neighbor is actually quite far away, at a distance that's not even known to astronomers. It's all due to trick photography, a complete fluke because of where the two galaxies are in relation to NASA's Hubble telescope. It's like if you jump at the right angle with a photographer crouched, getting a shot of you leaping over one of the pyramids. Only this is on a much larger and more amazing scale. But there's something even more amazing. Astronomers were focusing on NGC 105 because it contains a pair of astrological phenomena. It has Cepheid variables, meaning it contains a rare class of pulsating stars. It also has cataclysmic supernova explosions, meaning the galaxy contains several stars that are in the catastrophic death strokes of their lives. These two phenomena, because they produce such extraordinary light, are used by scientists to measure distances through space. NGC 105 is now helping astronomers figure out how fast the universe is expanding by acting as a kind of marker in their galactic map. Black holes. Black holes are arguably the most fascinating cosmic phenomena most people are aware of. A black hole is formed when a very large star collapses and then continues to grow by absorbing cosmic energy and merging with other black holes. Scientists have known about these for years, especially since they're so easy to identify. Because a black hole sucks in any light that gets near it, they can be seen in space as literal black holes or voids of light. Plus, they give off so much radiation that astronomers can see a very specific type of radiation light leaking out of them. It's not real light, but rather only visible using special instruments. Astronomers even know that there's a supermassive black hole, meaning one that is ridiculously huge and powerful, inside our very own Milky Way galaxy. And here's where things get terrifying. According to Dr. Alessandro Sfondrini from the Institute for Theoretical Physics, a black hole could delete the universe. Yes, the entire universe. It's not going to happen yet, but perhaps in the future. When a black hole becomes large enough, it could potentially swallow every single thing. One black hole gets so big it merges with another. The same thing happens throughout the universe until all matter in existence is sucked into a void without light or gravity. The only good news is that it won't happen for a few trillion years. What do you think of the theory that all of existence could be eaten by a black hole the size of the entire universe? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. Diamond Super Earth. There are so many planets in the universe that it's hard to even imagine them all. And while most are fairly boring pieces of rock, there is one alien planet that's something of a phenomenon. It's called Planet 55 Cancri E, and scientists say it's the very first planet they've ever discovered that's literally made out of diamonds. An entire planet filled to the brim with a simple mineral that people here on Earth spend thousands of dollars to wear around their necks. How is this possible? It all comes down to the ratio of carbon to oxygen. At the very center of the solar system, located 40 light-years from our own, scientists identified a carbon-to-oxygen ratio of over 1. This suggested that the planet located at the very center of the system was made primarily of diamonds. The planet itself is a super-Earth, about twice as large as our planet, with a mass 8 times greater. Its chemical makeup, in theory, could mean that its surface is a rocky terrain of diamond instead of standard rock. And it's all because of insanely high carbon levels. Jupiter's spot. When it comes to space phenomena, one of the rarest and most unique features of our specific solar system is the Great Red Spot of Jupiter. It was first observed by the amateur astronomer Samuel Heinrich Schwab in 1831. This tells us the storm inside the red spot has been going on for at least 150 years, but scientists believe it's been significantly longer than that. But just what's going on in the Great Red Spot that's so interesting? It's basically just one massive storm. It's a storm over twice as wide as our own planet, because of how big the planet Jupiter itself is. Just a single storm is bigger than 2 Earths combined. The storm circles the southern hemisphere, with winds along the edge reaching somewhere around 425 miles per hour, 683 kilometers per hour. That's double the strongest hurricane ever recorded on Earth. The big mystery is that scientists can't figure out what started the storm hundreds or thousands of years ago. They also don't know why it just continues moving north to west, then south again. It could theoretically go on forever. In fact, because Jupiter doesn't have a solid surface, the storm has never technically made landfall. Rather than a surface, Jupiter has a sky over 44 miles, 70.8 kilometers deep, filled with layers of ammonia ice, hydrosulfide, and water ice vapor. It's all balanced over an ocean of liquid hydrogen. Underneath the ocean of liquid hydrogen is actually the core of Jupiter, something scientists have no idea about. Nobody knows what the core of Jupiter is made of. It's all a raging mystery. Earth 2.0. About 111 light-years away from us is the very best candidate for human habitability. It's Earth 2.0, the best and closest exoplanet that humans may one day migrate to. Astronomers using the Hubble Space Telescope even discovered water vapor in the atmosphere of the planet, suggesting it could have liquid water. It's a total anomaly, seeing as these types of Goldilocks planets are so rare they could be considered phenomena. The planet orbits a star slightly smaller than our Sun, yet it's in the perfect habitable zone, where it could be warm enough for liquid water and not so hot that it would make life impossible. The proper name for Earth 2.0 is K218b. It was first identified by NASA's Kepler spacecraft in 2015. Its mass is 8 times that of Earth, meaning it's either a giant block of ice like Neptune or a rocky world with an atmosphere rich in hydrogen. Either way, it's the only planet right now located outside of our cozy solar system that has an appropriate temperature for supporting water. Crude models, according to National Geographic, have predicted average temperatures of between 100 and 116 degrees Fahrenheit, or 37.7 and 46.6 degrees Celsius. If we are ever to leave Earth and try to colonize a new world, this could potentially be it. Dark matter and dark energy. Dark matter is the craziest phenomenon in the universe, and something that scientists barely have a tangible grasp on. Dark matter and dark energy are both cosmic forces that nobody has been able to see or detect, but that scientists say are pretty much everywhere. It all began in 1998, when scientists realized the universe isn't just expanding, its expansion is getting faster. This implied that an unknown force is driving the expansion, pushing the universe out from every angle. This unknown force was dubbed dark energy. Dark matter is a little different than dark energy. It's confusing, to say the least. It's invisible and doesn't interact with light or ordinary matter, yet there seems to be more of it than the normal matter that we can see. Scientists believe the phenomenon of dark matter is responsible for 25% of the universe. Around 70% of the universe is dark energy. Only 5% is actual matter that we can see and interact with. And that's basically as far as anyone has gotten. The good news is that with the recent launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, scientists are hopeful that they'll be able to uncover some of the more complex cosmic mysteries of the universe. Hopefully, one of them is dark matter. Which of these amazing cosmic phenomena would you love to witness from the deck of a spaceship? Let me know in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, remember to hit subscribe for more awesome videos. Come back soon, and I can't wait to share more incredible phenomena and discoveries with you.